Kobani is a historical city in Rojava, built in the valley of Suruc, nearly 100 kilometers from Urfa, the ancient city of prophets. Kobani is a city in the Aleppo Governorate in northern Syria, lying immediately south of the border with Turkey. Kobani is located 25 kilometers to the east of the Euphrates River. The main sources of income involve lentils, barley, wheat, cumin, and nuts. Forming of the city begins in 1892. There are 350 villages in Kobani and 2 provinces, named Sirin and Sio. The population, previously nearly 400,000, increased to 500,000 following the revolution in Syria. The majority of inhabitants are Kurds, with Arab, Turkmen and Armenian minorities. The locals of Kobani, mainly the Kurds, have always been the target of pro-Arab nationalist policies. In 1965, the Ba'ath regime implemented a series of Arabization policies, including promoting the Arabic belt around the city of Kobani in an attempt to assimilate Kurds. Thousands of Arabs were brought from Idlib and placed in Kurdish cities and villages in Rojava. But these policies proved to be unsuccessful. Despite all attempts of marginalization, hunger, massacres and deportations, the Kurds of Rojava refused to give up their land and culture. In 2011, the Arab Revolution reached Syria, and the peoples of Syria rose against the Assad regime. When ISIS suddenly gained power and heavy weapons in Mosul and Raqqa, they turned their guns towards Kobani. The newly established canton suddenly had to stand against new attacks on September 15, 2014. ISIS intensified attacks upon the canton using heavy weaponry, which led to the displacement of residents from villages to the city of Kobani. The barbaric ISIS approached the city centre, rendering the city unsafe for civilians who were forced to flee to the Turkish border. Thousands of people were left besieged at the border, facing an extreme humanitarian situation. The resistance of the fighters continued village by village as they removed civilians from war zones to safer areas. Thousands of refugees from Kobani waited for weeks near the border in anticipation of the day their home would be liberated. Also waiting at the border were Turkish tanks and military who watched passively as the city was bombed and attacked by ISIS. "135 countries, the same day, same hour. Thousands of people went on the streets to show solidarity against ISIS. Thousands of intellectuals made an urgent call on the 1st of November, on World Kobani Day. This is humanity. This is solidarity. Through this solidarity, we will succeed." In the battlefield, the YPG and the YPJ, along a number of internationalist fighters, were the only forces fighting. A month passed. Kobani had still not fallen and proved that it will not fall. Assistance and cooperation with international coalition forces, along with members of Free Syrian Army, proved the establishment of a new paradigm in the region. The Kurds announced the adoption of the Third Way approach and proposed democratic self-determination as an alternative solution to the crisis in Syria. On July 19, 2011, Kurds took over the administration in Kobani and announced democratic self-determination. In order to defend themselves, the Kurds of Rojava declared the formation of the People's Protection Units, the YPG, on May 15, 2011. The young women and men of Kobani, with limited assets and minor artillery, stood up against tanks and heavy weapons and initiated a historical war of resistance against ISIS. Every fighter that fell as a martyr knew that they were paving the way for the Kurdish people's freedom with each drop of their blood. Kobani proved to humanity that it was the only city which had resisted against ISIS and did not surrender. During the heavy battle days, the statement "Kobani is falling" was spreading around. The YPG and the YPJ resistance, however, turned the political equilibrium in the Middle East upside down. Kobani's perseverance was for humanity, and as a result, it had now become a symbol of global resistance. On the day of January 26, after more than 400 martyrs and 113 days of war, Kobani was finally free. In Kobani, there are 13 districts, out of which 7 are completely in ruins, 4 moderately damaged, and 2 are more or less intact. The infrastructure of the city was destroyed when it was besieged by ISIS, who deliberately targeted and conducted suicide attacks to destroy the city. Of the 871 hectares Kobani was built on, the shelling and airstrikes turned 456 hectares to devastated rubble. The ISIS attacks were not indiscriminate. Every aspect of life was systematically targeted. The infrastructure, schools, and in particular vast sections of the health sector were destroyed and are in urgent need of rebuilding. As part of its policy to destabilize Kobani, ISIS cut off the electricity supplies to the canton. The power station is currently under the control of ISIS, and no power flows towards Kobani. The electricity grids have been damaged to the estimated level of 66%. Despite this obstacle in the daily running of civilian life, a generator power system was set up and has been running in Kobani since. But ISIS has destroyed the fuel depot from where the generators gain power from. The 4 previous existing hospitals have been rendered non-operational during and after the war with ISIS. As a result of the deliberate policy of targeting hospitals, the Department of Health was forced to evacuate the hospitals and resort to creating temporary and mobile medical points within the city. As a result, the Ministry of Health resorted to transporting the injured to bordering Turkish hospitals for treatment under extremely difficult conditions. Many of the wounded died at the border gate. They did not receive immediate surgical assistance, and as a result of border procedures by the Turkish authorities. The immediate rebuilding of the health sector in Kobani remains one of the most urgent concerns of the canton. The canton's economy is heavily agricultural based and dependent on plant and animal production. As a result of hostilities and the displacement of people, no crops were planted or produced. The livestock was also dispelled, killed, relocated and confiscated by ISIS. Refugees who had fled started returning almost immediately following the liberation of Kobani.
داش مالی مخرابه کرد اما ورگوش لعرده رینن اما وگرنه کوبانی خواه هر بجیش کوبانی را هر بجیش
والله اتشي نو خازم ام پنج معنی جی في درکینه ام دخوازن توم ام وگرنه باشاری خوا و ام الجی وگریانی کی و الحمدلله باشار ماجی آوا بو کیفی ما پری خواشه
ام نه برگی سپوچی یا پکویا پاشه دکن قوانو ام خلاص کردن ام اینو نکن که ام هیرو کوبانی خواب ببینن و ام نه جی صبر نکن که ام هر عرض خواه کردن باشار خواب ببینن.
Despite the total destruction, people have high hopes of regaining their lives. Over 70,000 people have returned home since April 2015. The wave of return is steady and ongoing. However, the refugees remain unassisted. The documented damages and respectively the reconstruction required in all sectors are of the utmost urgency for a smooth transition for the civilians of Kobanë. The barbarism of ISIS was not limited to the city centre. Many villages were destroyed too. However, when the city was liberated, Kurdish fighters initiated a cleaning up operation. Whenever the terrorists could not resist the offensive, they often left traps and mines in people's homes while retracting from the region. Although most booby traps have been localised, explosions from these have already cost more than 50 civilians their lives. This includes children, women and elderly. Normalisation of life in Kobani is inevitably related to addressing basic but urgent needs. The magnitude of destruction is at a highest possible level. The victory can only be sustained if urgent needs for life can be met, and this way provide the only correct approach towards those wanting to terminate life. Thousands of people from Kobani want to return to their land and normal lives. And this is why the first task is to attend to these people's needs. Before the war, there were 445 schools in the canton and surrounding villages, and there were 58,000 students who were receiving education. There were 25 schools in Kobani, of which 6 have been completely destroyed and 19 have sustained damages. The war against ISIS has come at a heavy cost for the Kobani canton. It has rendered all aspects of life impossible. All that which makes up habitable environment has been destroyed, including infrastructure, hospitals, agriculture, education, economy and social capital specifically, but not exclusively. Due to the war, all agricultural production was halted, with ISIS seizing large quantities of towns' grain stores. The flour required for bread production is received through aid and assistance. Kobani receives 20 tons of flour daily. However, if all the refugees are to return to their homes, the demand will increase to at least 70 tons per day. There is currently one bakery which is in operation and struggles to supply the whole city. This is one of the reasons why the Turkish border crossing must allow the crossing of basic food and aid supplies. During the conference in Ahmed, which convened around their headline, "Taking ownership of Kobani is taking ownership of values of humanity," the level of destruction was analysed and presented by international experts. The reconstruction of Kobani is a duty for everyone who believes in humanity and love. Not attending to this resistance will devalue the huge historical struggle and reduce its significance to be forgotten in history. But taking ownership of this resistance and humanity will keep it alive. The border between Turkey and Rojava is an important corridor for the humanitarian process in Kobani. The supply of essential aid and humanitarian relief supplies such as baby formula, medical needs, clothes, tents, school supplies, rebuilding materials and machinery, and clean water, among other needs. It is important that Turkey is encouraged and pressured to open the humanitarian corridor to allow such supplies to reach the canton in a speedy and humane way.